Hi, I'm Bill Borton, host of Live Better Longer here on RVN TV. I'm here with my guest Peter Gilbert this week to talk about estate planning matters. Peter Gilbert's founding attorney at High Point Law Office is a unique estate planning practice excelling in serving and supporting clients by appreciating their goals, values, and passion for life's important matters. The law is Peter's second career after having served in a pastoral ministry for 17 years. Peter's unique background in divinity sets the tone for a law practice that is rooted in respect and compassion, and by helping others build better futures through estate planning, long-term care planning, special needs planning, and business planning. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate being on your show.
Yes, I'm looking forward to our conversation today. So, Peter, how can affluent families simplify their estate planning process?
You know, estate planning, we lawyers can make estate planning awfully complicated. We like trusts, we like LLCs, family partnerships, and so on. Those structures can be really helpful, but first of all, it's often very confusing to the client. But I think more importantly, it isn't always what's right for them. So if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about a goose.
Please.
Namely, the goose that laid the golden eggs.
I've heard that one.
And we're going to talk about that as our model for estate planning. The goose is the parent or the business or the original wealth, the golden eggs are what go to the children. But I'd like to tell you a little bit about three pathways that people can do planning that are maybe more in tune with their family's culture. You see, all these structures can be great. I know a lot of those myself in estate planning, trusts, and so on. But that's only one wing, you might say, if we're talking about birds. Only one wing of the estate plan. The other wing is the family. What kind of family is it? What's their own, how are their relationships? What kind of family culture do they have? If the planning doesn't match the family and their uniqueness, it's not going to work. And the only really important thing I believe about an estate plan is, will it work? So we need to match those two. So to help people understand this and find their match, we're talking about three different pathways for estate planning and seeing which one is the right one. So the first pathway is what we call simply division. It's a once and done type of plan. The goose goes to the tax man and maybe some to philanthropy, and the kids get a lot of eggs. Mm-hmm. That's the division plan, and it is very simple. Its attraction is its simplicity. We do try to still save some taxes wherever we can, but basically we're looking at one generation, getting the assets, whatever they are, to the next generation as efficiently as we can.
So in that example, though, the goose is basically deciding what happens with the eggs.
Right.
There isn't a lot of discussion among family members.
No, there isn't.
The
It's a
second
transfer.
generation basically gets what they get.
They get what they get, and in each pathway there are certain skill sets required of the family to make this successful.
One of which is actually talking to one another.
Well, we'll get to that. But you think about it, when that next generation is receiving those golden eggs, that money or that business, whatever it is, the skill set, the primary skill set for this model, the division model, is they need financial competence. They need to be able to manage this money that they're receiving. Mm-hmm. They need to know about taxes. They need to know about how much to spend. Because understand that whatever wealth there was in this family, these children grew up accustomed to a certain lifestyle.
Sure.
But now that's being divided up among 2, 3, or whatever it is children. So each child doesn't have as much money as mom and dad did.
True, and
the
child may not have been managing the lifestyle either. They were just the recipient.
They were the recipient. Now it's theirs. And so
time for that new Porsche, right?
Well, it could be, and it's a test in a way. But the skill set that to be successful, to work, and by work it means, does this benefit the next generation? They have to have that skill set, that fundamental skill set of financial management, of being able to manage their own spending and their debts and making sure that money is there. And so that may be already done, or it may be very uncertain. Now, that particular pathway, the division pathway, is really simple. A lot of people like it for that reason, and I'm okay with that. But it often may be contradicting why mom and dad worked and saved all those years. Because maybe their hope, their prayer was that money would be helping their family to go higher, to go faster, go farther for many generations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that may be contradicting their hope, their dream, if it simply goes to the next generation, and we're not sure if there will be anything there for the grandkids
Mm-hmm.
when all is said and done. So, again, this is an idea for the family to think about, is this going to fit for them? Does the family, the next generation, have that right skill set to make this particular pathway successful?
Before we get into the second pathway, Peter, I want to take a break for a word from our sponsor. This is Bill Borton. We'll be back in a few moments. Thank you. Welcome back to Live Better Longer. I'm your host, Bill Borton, and I'm here with my guest this week, Peter Gilbert from High Point Law Offices. Peter, why do you believe that estate planning gets unnecessarily complicated and hard to understand?
Well, I mentioned the three pathways. We're now talking about the second pathway. And the second pathway, going back to our goose story, is the kids do get some golden eggs, but the goose goes to the goose farmers. The goose farmers are the trustees, the financial advisors, the other people, the advisory team, expert team that's going to help. Because the purpose of the second pathway is not to divide up the assets and give it to the children and be done. The purpose of the second pathway is to preserve that wealth, to preserve it for the long term, protect it, you might say also. So it's going to be there. Now, with this second pathway, the client is thinking more about maybe 3 generations, not just the kids, maybe also the grandkids.
This could apply in a multi-generational family business.
It could.
Particularly where somebody from the second generation is really not active in the business, but the third generation is showing some signs of interest or ability.
It could. And so you've got structures. It could be very well a business structure, could be an LLC, a corporation, trusts, and so on. So in this one, the children need to have not only the skill set of their own personal financial competence, but now they have to learn how to manage and deal with all these structures. So in a sense, what the children are getting are the wrappers. They're not really getting the goose, they're not getting the wealth, they're getting the wrappers that hold the wealth, the trust, the LLCs, whatever it is, the family foundation maybe. So they have to be able to understand these sometimes very complicated structures that are set up to preserve this wealth for a long time. So they need to be able to interact with the advisors, interact with and help manage these structures. They need to know governance. They need to know governance of the business, of the wealth.
So now they're actually becoming a part of the estate planning team.
They are not the whole team, because you have advisors and structures.
Sure.
They are now interacting with those. They have to be able to understand and contribute and be engaged with that. And the risk is for this, this structure can be very good because it does preserve the wealth. It can preserve the wealth, protect it for a long time, as well as saving taxes and giving income to the children. But the disadvantage potentially is that the children become entitled. They become disengaged from actually being involved in these structures. They just say, give me my check this month, whatever. And when they get disengaged, they're not actively involved. They don't have that skill set of, I call governance,
right,
working with the advisors that they should have. Now, advisors are always present in these structures. In that first pathway, the financial advisor role would have been to educate the children, maybe, on how to invest, how to manage investments, and so on. In this, that would be true also, but also the advisors are actively managing these structures, helping with these structures.
Well, for advisors who are looking to maintain the family wealth through the next generation, being involved in this type of planning would be helpful in that regard.
It would be, but again, the risk is that the children become, as I said, disengaged. If for them it's simply a passive action. Now, again, the idea behind explaining these pathways is, my experience is, if I'm talking to the founding generation, the first generation, once they hear about these pathways, it doesn't take them long to figure out where their family fits in or where they want their family to fit in.
Mhm.
They know their children.
Right.
They know their grandchildren maybe also. And so and understand with this kind of structure, they can more or less focus on the pathway or that seems best to them without having to know all the ins and outs of all those detailed structures. That comes later.
Mm-hmm.
First, we know which pathway seems appropriate for you, Mr. and Mrs. Client. Then we can talk about the structures. And then they make sense,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to doing them just because of tax saving or because this is what we do as
This
lawyers.
more complex process sounds
It
like
is.
it could take quite a bit of time.
This is a more complex, yes it is. It's a more complex process in its creation and in its ongoing operation. More moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
More decisions to make. So that would be, again, none of these are necessarily on their own better or worse than any other pathway.
Sure.
They're just designed for a different purpose.
Now, who would typically quarterback or conduct this kind of a process? Would it be the attorney?
Ideally it would be the client's most trusted advisors, if I can use that cliche.
Okay.
The ones the people that client family has most trust in, has most experience with, who listen to them, and they have wise counsel. Effect. So I would hope it would not just be one advisor.
Sure.
Because that could be a little bit shaky. So hopefully it's CPA, accounting, financial advisor, attorney, so in some cases a trustee, whether it's a custodial or non-custodial trust company, and sometimes other skill sets are involved with that. But certainly those are the primary advisory team that I would ideally want to see involved.
Okay. So in these types of situations, do you find that the engagement of the client is something that's easy to elicit, or is it more difficult to keep them involved and on track because they may be running their business or dealing with other pressing matters, and they engage the team and give you all the mandate to develop the process with an end in mind, but keeping them engaged and on point, is that challenging at times?
Well, let's take your idea of a business or a family that has wealth. I mean, the idea of succession is going to come up anyway, even if we're not even talking estate planning. I was at a board meeting last night for an organization I'm part of. We were talking about succession of different executives. Any business owner has that on his or her mind. So that's really nothing new. We're just expanding that conversation about succession of a business or a farm or whatever it is, or wealth. And we're saying, okay, let's do it. Let's figure out what that's going to be, but in a larger sense. So we're not really adding anything all that new. We're just thinking more comprehensively about it.
Very well said. We're going to take another break for a word from our sponsor. We'll be back in just a moment with more Live Better Longer. Hi, welcome back to Live Better Longer. I'm your host, Bill Borton, here with Peter Gilbert from High Point Law Offices. Peter, if people want to reach you, I guess they can go to your website, highpointlawoffices.com.
High Point, H-I-G-H, highpointlawoffices.com.
And how else?
Our phone number is area code 215, we're in Bucks County, 215-997-9773.
Very good. So Peter, I'm dying to know, what's the third pathway?
There is a third pathway.
Yes.
And this one's called growth. And this is not just to pass the assets down, not only to protect them and preserve the assets, but also to grow them. And this is where the family, when I say family, I mean the next generation or 2 or 3 or 4, is fully engaged. They are now the goose farmers. They're the ones who are in charge. Now they will still use the services of the professionals we talked about. Of course they will. And they'll interact with those. But now instead of being, assisting them, now they're in charge. The children are in charge. They're the ones managing, I said, that goose farm, whether it's the business itself,
Right.
or the business of managing wealth, or some combination of that. So, and this one potentially could not only, I said, keep the wealth, but grow it. Why? Because each generation there's more people
Sure.
to divide that up and help out with. So of course you'd like to grow it. But the skill set obviously builds. Each pathway adds more skill sets. So the first pathway, financial skills. Second, with wealth management skills. The third includes those, but now we need governance skills, relationship skills. Because why, say you've got 2, 3, whatever children, and then eventually grandchildren, all working together in some way, we have to find who are the leaders. It's like looking at any business succession. Who are the ones that ought to be in management roles?
Sure, you got it, and you have to create a pathway for them to get there.
And to be educated, trained in this. Start now. Start now training them and getting them ready to play their role in this, whatever it is, business or wealth management structure. They also the children need to get along with each other and be able to interact and make decisions together, and even sometimes their preferred path, their preferred decision doesn't get adopted. They have to learn to live with that.
Overcoming the sibling rivalries,
Overcoming that.
and the mom liked you best, and the pecking order, and those types of things.
All of that, they need to outgrow that if it was there, and they need to be able to work together and manage together successfully in a way that will last. And then they too will need to do the same thing to their children. So it becomes an ongoing family culture, a family education system. Who are the ones that are going to be in leadership roles in this generation? There will be some who are and some who don't want to be or aren't. That's not their thing. That's fine.
Sure.
But they're all valuable. But this is a very different model than, as you can see, from the others. But for some families, this is their preferred model. This is what they want more than anything else. They want the family to be engaged and involved in this and grow this wealth over time.
That simply makes sense.
Right. And again, we're not talking about multi-million necessarily, but whatever the family has, this might be their model.
Okay. So what challenges do you then run into when you're looking at trying, again, to create the pathway for the second, the third, the fourth generation to become involved?
I think the challenge, one of the challenges, many of course, besides the legal technical, I won't go into those. I think the challenge is for the advisors and the family to speak the truth. A wise man once said, progress doesn't begin until you start telling the truth. So is our family, what is our family culture? And we might want to be in this pathway, but really it wouldn't work.
Well, that comes back to families talking to one another.
That's right.
Starting when the kids are little.
That's right. Or maybe we could go down that path, but we're going to have to start working on it now. We can't just say, okay, when we die, you'll do this. No, that won't work. So I think the challenge might be for the family sometimes, and the advisors, to go beyond the legal, technical tax talk, which is important.
Well, not all advisors are really good at advising. They may be really good with tax matters
And
or
that's
with
fine.
drafting trusts and other legal documents, but as we were talking before the show, Peter, being able to really truly help create an ongoing and effective communication among family members and helping people to get along and to really truly listen to one another is not easy.
But that's real success. And you know, when on larger estates, there have been some studies done, when estate plans fail. It's usually not because of the documents were wrong or the advisor made bad investment decision. It's the family couldn't do this. The next generation had too many disputes or misunderstandings, or they didn't know how to handle the wealth. It's about the people, when plans fail, most likely. So again, I like this pathway idea because it helps families figure out fairly quickly where they want to go and isolate what kind of education or what kind of preparation they have to make.
So Peter, you like to use stories, I know, when you're describing complex concepts. What would you recommend to someone who is wanting to engage in this type of planning process, either of any of the three pathways? How do they go about selecting the right team of advisors? What do they need to look for besides just simple competency?
Well, of course, that's a given. That just gets you to the table, that's all. We assume every advisor is competent, and that's true basic. But beyond that, you think your advisor needs to be one, your advisors maybe, who ask you some really good questions. And then they really listen to the answers that you give. Not just how much do you have and how much tax do you pay, and those are important questions and so on, but more the kind of questions that would relate to the pathways I'm talking about. Questions about yourself and your vision for the future. about your family and family skills and relationships. And really, what kind of future does this client want? What would be their ideal calendar? Where they want to be in 5, 10 years? So I think advisors who ask really good questions and then listen to and make use of those answers is a very important attribute of at least some of your advisors. Now, some are going to be great workers and they do a great job on what they do, whether it's drafting documents or doing the books or whatever, managing wealth, whatever that's fine. But you need, I think, somebody, at least one person, who's going to be going beyond that and getting a sense of what will really work for you and not putting you into, well, not maybe judging you simply by your balance sheet, but looking at what kind of person you are, what kind of family dynamics are going on in your situation.
So in addition to the core subject matter or the core objectives that you have when you enter into one of the 3 processes, you end up running into a lot of ancillary issues, things like long-term care planning, possibly special needs planning, depending upon a child that may have some issues. So you get off on a lot of, I guess, tangents or...
Well, they're not tangents, they're just what is needed. What this family needs in their planning, especially Bill, if you're on the 2nd or 3rd pathway where we're looking long-term. Then we have to build in some readiness for things that we just don't even know about yet, for people who might not even be born yet. So we need we need advisors, good advisors. We need to be thinking, be prepared for those things and have a system in place that can deal with them. Whatever, like you meant, long-term care is an issue we have to deal with a lot with our clients, but looking down the road, what if there is a special needs person coming down the road? Let's build in a readiness for that so we're not caught unprepared.
Great. Peter, this has been terrific, and as usual, the time just flies by. But at this point, we've reached the end of another episode of Live Better Longer. I'm your host, Bill Borton. My guest, Peter Gilbert, can be reached at highpointlawoffices.com, or what was that number again, Peter?
215-997-9773.
Great, Peter. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Bill.
Take care. And we'll see you again next Tuesday at 11 on RVN TV for another episode of LiveBetterLonger.com. Thank you.